writers, you're listening to the Kobo Writing Life podcast, where we bring you insights and inspiration for growing your self-publishing business. We're your hosts. I'm Rachel, author engagement manager for Kobo Writing Life.
And I'm Laura, Kobo Writing Life's other author engagement manager.
On today's episode, we had the delight to chat with very steamy romance author Golden Angel. Golden is a USA Today bestselling author of heart and bottom-warming romance. She has been publishing since 2012 and became a full-time author in 2020. She's the vice president of the Maryland Romance Writers and has been the speaker for multiple marketing presentations at various events, including InkersCon, the RWA Indie Author Event, a Romance Author Mastermind Roundtable, and other local writing groups.
We talked to Golden about so many different topics, from writing books in the same world and how to create interconnected series, how she markets her steamier romance and her tips for that. We also talked about building a following on TikTok and her series of author advice, which is titled Just the Tip. We even got into speaking at conferences and attending conferences and her advice for that. So definitely tune in. There's lots of great advice here.
We are joined today by author Golden Angel. Golden, thank you so much for joining us today.
For having me.
Now, can you kind of kick things off by telling our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my pen name is Golden Angel. I'm a USA Today best-selling author of what I call heart and bottom-warming romance. I write kinky romance in the past, present, and future. So I like to genre hop around. I have been self-publishing for 12 years. I also have 2 traditionally published books, the first of which I think came out in 2016. And I originally started writing for a website in 2005. So next year will be my 20th anniversary of actually putting my work out into the world, which is kind of cool. And now this is my full-time job, which I love. And I also am on TikTok, where I give author advice on a series that I call Just the Tip. And I sometimes do very rambling author thoughts that people seem to enjoy, called my Nighttime Author Thoughts, which is a little bit more informal.
We're definitely going to dig into that a little bit more later. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got your start in indie publishing? And did you always know you wanted to go indie?
So I didn't actually realize indie was an option. Like I said, when I first started writing, it was back in 2005. It was for an erotica website, and I was in college, and I was just enjoying being able to write and put stories out there and get feedback. And then in 2012, a couple of readers from the website, there was a story that I had been writing called The Venus School. And a couple of the readers asked me if I would publish it so that they could own the book instead of just reading it on the website, and so that they could carry it with them when they traveled, like on a Kindle or Kobo Reader, Nook, whatever was going on at that point, the various e-readers. And I thought, okay, well, let me see how hard this is. And it turned out uploading the book is the really easy part. So I decided to go ahead and upload the book, and I put it everywhere that I could think of, because I didn't know where my readers were all coming from. I knew I had a lot of readers on the website, and I figured if more than just those couple readers wanted to be able to download it, I wanted them to be able to get it from whatever bookstore retailer that they prefer to use. And I was really lucky, because 2012 was kind of the start of indie publishing. I came in with an audience from the website. I did not edit the book. I did my own cover, which was terrible and is up on Goodreads for forever shame me and haunt me. But it made a little bit of a splash. And I think that's partly because back then, everything was still very much trad pub. So you could put up a book with little editing and a bad cover, and people would still purchase it, in part because they were looking for genre instead of, what I was writing was a very specific genre, of which there wasn't a lot of, because 50 Shades hadn't come out yet. So it was a very niche genre. And I was very lucky that my audience did follow me over from the website, and I kept writing for the website, and I started publishing more books because I realized, hey, this is kind of cool that people want to pay me to write back then. And this still continues a little bit to this day, but it's so much better than it used to be. But there was, there was a lot of stigma about self-publishing and being an indie author. And so back then I did still have the goal of becoming a traditionally published author because I thought it would make me feel more like a real author. My husband would get very frustrated with me when I would talk about how, one day when I'm a real author, and he's like, you have 10 books out. Would you like to call yourself a real author now? And I was like, no, not really. So yeah, and it everything kind of snowballed from there. I kept writing and I kept publishing books, and I did end up getting an agent, thanks to the website. That's where she actually found me. They ended up publishing that book. I've done a second book with her, but by that time I was pretty well established in my self-publishing career and had realized that I was doing really well with it and I could make an income from it. And I ended up going full time in 2020. And along the way, I got a lot of help. I got a lot of help from other authors, and the romance community in general was very welcome people with open arms. There's a lot of open advice, a lot of people sharing their knowledge, and very happy to do so, both for free or through courses. And by the time I got onto TikTok, which was also in late 2020, I must have garnered some kind of reputation for being helpful or something, because I had a lot of people in my inbox all the time sending me messages asking advice or questions, and I was always happy to help, but I also realized it was becoming a pretty big time suck. And I said to one of my friends, I'm thinking about starting doing some author tips on TikTok so that I can just send people the link to the video, because a lot of these questions you hear the same questions over and over and over again. And I'd like to be able to answer people, but this is also a lot. And she said, oh my gosh, you have to, and you have to call it Just the Tip. And I said, well, it's with my branding. So sure, let's do that. And then it took off, which kind of like the beginning of my writing career, I didn't really expect either. It's been a wild ride.
I'm so curious because you've been writing for almost 20 years. You've been published for over 10, but you only relatively recently made the transition to full-time author. And I'm kind of curious how that transition has been and what kind of spurred that decision.
Part of it was just realizing that it was possible. Like I said, the first few years, I struggled a lot with imposter syndrome and the idea that I wasn't a real author. And because of that, I didn't treat my business like it was a real business. It was, this is fun money. It was, I'm doing this and people are paying me for it. And isn't that cool? But also, I was still writing stuff for the website for free. I didn't have a newsletter for the first 2 years of my career. I wasn't doing any kind of marketing. I wouldn't have known how to. As I said, my covers were terrible, so bad that within the first year of publishing, a reader reached out to me and she said, I'm a graphic designer. I love your books. Your covers need help. Can I do them for you for free?
What a great reader.
So absolutely lovely, lovely woman. Her name was Crystal, and I think she helped me so much out of the generosity of her heart. And, and I did get to the point when I was first writing, and doing this, it was like, oh, I can start paying off student loans. I can start paying off credit cards. And I'm very happy I was able to start paying her before she had to move on. She started doing other things with her career. But I was really, really pleased that I was able to pay her before. And then by the time that she left me, I had finally kind of accepted a little bit more that I was an author. I had a newsletter. I had gotten onto Facebook. I'd started connecting with other authors. And so I was able to find another cover artist when she left, which made a huge difference. And just being connected to other authors made a huge difference. Being the beneficiary of just hearing their conversations, of being able to ask questions, the community with the cross promotion as a whole, like cross promotion is such a huge part of being able to reach readers and find new readers. And once you start getting your own readers, is a really great way to be like, was they're going, hey, when's your next book coming out? And you're like, in 2 months, here, read this person. Give me a little bit of breathing space while I try to finish this book. So that's been really nice too. And then you get to make friends and everything. Like it can be a very lonely career, but at the same time, like there's so many wonderful people that there's also a lot of opportunity to make really great friendships. So
I feel like that's something we hear like time and time again about the indie author community is just how like non-gatekeepy and open a lot of indie authors are, both about like cross-promoting, but also helping uplift one another.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's something we've seen even just like going to conferences and meeting authors. Like everyone's so nice and welcoming. So that's one of the great things about the indie author community for sure.
Yeah. I feel like we hear bad things sometimes, and I do think it's like just this tiny, tiny minority. Sometimes loud, sometimes the things that happen are very like terrible and or dramatic, but I would say that 95% of the community is just incredibly warm and welcoming and wants to help and wants to be there for each other. And is and puts their money where their mouth is when it comes to that. Which is really wonderful. And I know I owe a lot of my own success to that. And that was also part of why I always wanted to help people too, because you give back to the people who gave to you when you can, but also, I mean, a lot of the people who helped me out are even further along in their career, because they were already ahead of me. So what I can do is at least pass it on to the people who are up and coming. And I think that's a very big theme in the community, is that a lot of us know that we got help to be where we are. And so we do want to pass that on.
I love that so much.
Do you have any advice for a new indie author who's maybe just starting out now?
Oh, someone asked me this the other day on a consult call, and I felt bad because I don't want to be negative. And at the same time, the market today is so different from the one that I entered, where I was able to go in and people bought my book with its very bad homemade cover and the lack of editing. And I eventually did go back and have an editor edit those books. They're still up, but they've been edited now. But it's so much harder. And I think that, you still get these really amazing success stories, and that's what people aspire to. And I don't ever want to tell people not to aspire to that. And at the same time, the reason we hear so much about them is because they're rare. It is much more likely that you're not going to make much money, if any money, on your first book. It's very likely that you're not going to make much, if any money, until your fifth or sixth book, or sometimes even 20th or 25th book. The market is a lot more saturated. When I released my first books, like I said, 50 Shades hadn't come out. There weren't a lot of people writing. There weren't as many. There were still a fair number. Like I was reading Lexi Blake, Cherise Sinclair, Shayla Black. Like there were authors that I was reading who were hitting the New York Times bestseller list with their books, but it didn't have the same kind of market saturation that we do today. Back then, people were finding my books because they were looking for any BDSM book. Now they can be hyper specific. They can look for a BDSM hockey team, Omegaverse rom-com, and there will be 50 recommendations on that Facebook post, because they can be that specific. They don't have to just go, I'll take anything BDSM because there's not that much out there. And so when you can be that specific, it's a lot harder to find readers because they have all these options. And so your cover has to tell them this is the kind of book you're looking for. Your blurb has to tell them this is the kind of book you're looking for. And it has to be engaging enough to sell them on purchasing your book. There's a lot of marketing that goes into it, a lot of getting in front of people. And when you only have one book or two books or three books, it is a lot. Like it's such a huge accomplishment. And I don't want to downplay that ever. That's incredible to have a book out. And at the same time, if you're looking for big financial success, or even the kind of financial success that would sustain a career or provide part-time, much less full-time income, the one book is probably not going to do it for you. And neither is two or three. Like once you start getting up towards the double digits, it gets a little bit easier, but it also depends on, how good your writing is, how good you are at finding the readers for your book, how popular the genre is, how much, and how many of those books are in that popular genre. A lot of us at the beginning of our career, we bounce around, we're experimenting, which is good. We should be, but it does mean that it's harder for readers coming in at that point to be like, if you've got a mafia romance and a Why Choose romance and a paranormal shifters romance, there's not necessarily going to be a lot of read through those three things. And if you've gone even further off and you're like, well, I've got this historical romance and also this contemporary thriller and this fun little cozy mystery, now you've almost definitely, those readers are not reading all of your books. But it's good for you to do that so that you can find where you want your lane to be. A lot of people can't just like choose their lane from the very beginning. We have to experiment and figure out what's working for us, what we want to write, and what the readers want to read. And that intersection is usually what becomes your lane.
And you've mentioned that the market is much more saturated now than it was 10, 15 years ago. Do you think there's one thing that new indie authors should focus more of their energy on, whether it be like paying for a good editor, finding that good cover artist, building up their mailing list? Is there one thing that you think is a really good starting point?
Writing the next book would be the biggest thing. Always the next book. I would say if you have money to spend on something, the first thing I would spend it on is the cover. The second would be the editor. And then the first thing I would spend my time on is the newsletter. A lot of people go straight to social media, and while you can, you need that, social media is great for gathering a following. However, it's also can be really dicey. TikTok can work really great, but if the algorithm changes, all of a sudden you have to change everything you're doing. Facebook can be wonderful, but if they close down your account, all of that's gone. And I say this as someone who's like, my Twitter got hacked. I lost it. I never got that Twitter account back. I have been locked out of my Facebook account for 24 hours. I've been locked and I did not know if I was getting the account back. I got locked out. I got blocked. I got kicked off of TikTok for 48 hours. Didn't know if I was getting that back. And I almost cried because I had over 20,000 followers. And I did get it back, but I didn't know if that was going to be the case. And every time that happened to me, I knew I was going to be okay, because if people went looking for me, I had a website and I had a newsletter. I had ways that people could contact me and that I could contact them that didn't rely on algorithm, that didn't rely on, the terms of community service or whatever they decided, whatever reason, that didn't rely, I suppose your newsletter can still get hacked like my Twitter did, but I do think it's harder and less interesting for people to do for the most part. So yeah, for me, newsletter before anything else, probably, because that way, even as I started building my social media, I try to tell people, hey, make sure you're following me on my newsletter, because if you're on Facebook, you may not see everything. The algorithms are not kind. Same thing with TikTok. The algorithms are not kind. Some of my videos, get 200 views. Some of them get 2,000. One of them recently got closer to 80,000, and then it dropped back down again. Like, you can't rely on it. So yeah, so that would be my first things. And the nice thing about the newsletter is it is more of a time investment, because a lot of the most popular newsletter providers have a free up to a certain number of subscribers. You can just be on their newsletter for free. And after that, they do start charging. And hopefully the idea of that would be that hopefully by the time you have that many newsletter subscribers, you also are making enough sales to pay for that newsletter fee. So yeah, that would be, I see. It drives me a little nuts. I see a lot of newer authors saying, oh, my first book is out or my second book is out. I'm spending all this money on ads and nobody's buying. And I just want to be like, stop spending money on ads. Put them up, save it, because books they're low cost items, first of all. So the return on investment on an ad, like the margin is so slim, because not everyone who clicks on the ad is going to buy the book. And any kind of marketing, any kind of advertising, if the cover and the blurb are not on point, there's no point in marketing or advertising, because people aren't going to buy it. So you need to have those things first. So that's where I'd spend the money first. And then you want to make sure it's a good book, because usually you can't make a huge return on investment on one book. It's possible. It's difficult. It's extremely difficult, even for really, really experienced authors who are really, really good at advertising. It's really difficult. So focusing on the book and getting the next book out, because if you advertise one book and it's a series, A lot of us will do this, whether you're in Kindle Unlimited or if you're a wide author and your books are available everywhere. You start people with that first book and then they read through. And that read through is where a lot of authors actually make their money, especially if you're wide. A lot of us do the first in series free. And we do that because we know it's a good book that people are going to go, wow, that was really good. I need the second book now. And then they go through the whole series.
So you've kind of mentioned that like the indie landscape has changed, obviously. Do you ever feel any pressure to jump on the newest trends, to try the newest marketing technique, or have you kind of just found what works for you and you just stick with it?
Constantly. I mean, there's so much pressure, and especially because there's so much that you can do now. There didn't used to be all those options. And I feel really lucky that I have been able to slowly add stuff over the years. I think it's very hard for newer authors right now stepping in and just being inundated with like, when I joined, it was like you needed a newsletter and you needed to be on Facebook and maybe Twitter. People would be like, you need to be on Facebook and Twitter and you need to have a newsletter. Okay, cool. And then Instagram came along. They're like, okay, you need to be on Instagram. Okay, I added Instagram. And then, TikTok came along. It's like, okay, you need to be on TikTok. Okay, like it took me a year, but I joined TikTok and I ended up loving it, which was great. Instagram, I struggled with, and I still am not really present on there. But by that point, I had stopped trying with Instagram, and I think that's important too. For me, I like to try new things and see if they click. I absolutely went into TikTok thinking this is going to be another Instagram. I'm going to get on. I'm going to just try it out so I can say I did, so that when people are saying, no, you need to be on TikTok, I can say, well, I tried it and I didn't like it. It's not for me. But I can say I tried it. And instead I got completely addicted, and it's like one of my favorite platforms. But, I've tried, I've looked at Threads. I did not immediately jump onto Mastodon the way a lot of people did, but I thought about it. I've been looking at Threads and trying to decide if I want to go on there or not. I've decided against for the moment, just because it is like you have to choose where you're spending your time. Because it is, like I said, the best thing to do is to write the next book. All of these other things are time sucks that are going to take away from that. So I do try to be really careful, but I do want to try things, especially if I see them working for other people. I did my first Kickstarter last year. I discovered I loved it. I was supposed to be trying to put together my direct shop this year. I have not done that yet, but I did a few years ago put a signed paperback shop up on my website. So I do have that, but I don't have the direct store, which is like the other big thing right now, along with the Kickstarters. It's on my to-do list. But there's so much that you can do, and it is so easy to burn out trying to do it all. And the best advice anyone ever gave me, and that I pass on to other people about it, is that you shouldn't be doing it all. You should be doing the things that bring you joy. And honestly, if no social media brings you joy, I would just buckle down on my newsletter. I get joy from TikTok. I get joy from my Facebook group. I do not get joy from Twitter or Instagram. And so I'm like never on there. You can schedule posts if you still want to have a presence. My best advice would be, and this is something I still haven't done for myself, but I plan on doing, is making your profile. Like, so for me, it would be like Twitter and Instagram, having my profile, it's there, and just leaving a link, leaving a post that says, I'm not really here. Here's where you can actually find me. And so that way people can just go, okay, well, they're not on here, but I'm also on Facebook, or I'm also on TikTok. So I'll go find them there. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
The question was about trying new things. And like, I think try it and see if it works for you is the best advice. Yeah.
These tips are going to work for different people. And as soon as someone tells me like, oh, you have to do this, my automatic response is, no, I don't. But sometimes those things are really helpful, and and like I said, they can surprise you. I really thought TikTok was going to be a month-long experiment, and instead it's one of my favorite things to do.
Let's dig into your TikTok a little bit while we're on the topic. So what can followers expect from your content? And can you tell us a little bit about the Just the Tip series that you hinted at before?
My content is absolute chaos, which goes against everything that I have learned in every TikTok class that I've taken. but it works for me. I was advised very early on to not put just the tip on my current account because you should keep author advice and your book promotion content separate. I did try it for like a week. I found that I am lazy and I don't like switching back and forth. I just want to run one account. So that's what I do. And whether that has helped me or hurt me is hard to say. I personally feel like it's helped me for the most part. I'm not saying that would be true for everyone. Like I said, everyone is different. Everyone's audience reacts differently. For me, I do feel like it's been an overall net positive for my career. And so I'm perfectly happy to keep running everything from that one account. So you will see everything from my Just the Tips series, where I give author tips and answer questions, to my nighttime author thoughts, which is usually just me rambling about whatever, usually something that I've seen somewhere on social media, a question someone asked, or something that grinds my gears, ranting a little bit about the authors who are spending money on advertising when they only have one book out, because I just want to jump in and save them. And sometimes they don't want to listen when you do that. And hopefully, I like to think that hopefully the message, one of them will see it and go, oh, I don't have to spend all my hard-earned money on advertising when I only have 2 books out. I can save it up and spend it when I have 10 books out. That's the hope. And then I also do my like book promotion. Sometimes I'll just do a random TikTok trend that I see going around because it amuses me. Sometimes I like to show little kind of behind the scenes stuff of conventions and signings that I go to. I recently went to CalypsoCon, and so I've been recovering, so I haven't posted much since then. But what I have been posting are kind of the behind the scenes of prep, and then some of the events at CalypsoCon, which was a lot of fun, and it's fun to post the videos. Yeah, I try. Again, I haven't been doing it since I got back from CalypsoCon because I've been recovering, but I do try to do it at least 2 to 3 just the tip videos a week now. For a while, I was doing them every day, but it is easy to get burned out, and I don't want to burn myself out on this stuff. So pulled back to 2 to 3 a week, and I try to do a nighttime author video, nighttime author thoughts at least once a week. And every once in a while, you get drunk nighttime author thoughts, and that seems to be a big crowd favorite, but I don't actually drink that often, so it's a little rare still. I don't have a huge filter, but that takes care of whatever little.
Like, do you find that TikTok is a good platform to engage with your readers as well as fellow authors?
Yeah, absolutely. I love book talk on there. And part of that I know is because I have very carefully curated my feed. I will occasionally see people talking about how negative book talk is, and I'm like, you're on the wrong side of book talk. And the best thing you can do when you get on the wrong side of the algorithm on TikTok is just scroll. So any type of negativity, like anytime I see someone like talking about what they don't like about a book or anything like that, I'm just like, nope, just immediate scroll. And then I stop and I watch the books I like watching the readers who are talking about their like monthly wrap up. They're talking about books that they love. They're talking about the tropes that they love. My to be read list has just exploded. And I really, I've gotten a lot out of it. I follow a lot of Latina and Black romance readers, and I have found so many new authors that way. I had my own list, but I found a lot of like newer indie authors that I might not have heard of that way. And then I follow a lot of authors, and if an author follows me that writes romance, I try to follow them back. So then some of their stuff starts popping up on my feed. It's been a really great way for me to kind of diversify my reading list, because my Amazon algorithm, the Amazon algorithms we're following what I had been reading. And so since TikTok has opened me up to a whole bunch of new readers, my Amazon algorithm has followed, or readers, and then I hear about what they're reading, and then I go and get it. And my Kobo algorithm has just like opened me up. The Amazon algorithm has opened up. Those are the 2 places I read personally, but I feel like it would work on any platform. It's just following the TikToks and then following what they're reading, and then the retail algorithms follow suit too. And I really enjoy TikTok for so many reasons.
I think what you said about the tropes is really important too. There's so many different tropes and micro tropes that people are embracing now. Do you have any favorites that you like to play around with, either in your writing or when you're reading yourself?
Oh yeah. I mean, for me, writing Grumpy Sunshine is one of my favorites. That shows up one way or another in almost all of my books. Usually it's the guy that's grumpy. That's the life I live. My husband is a grump and I'm the sunshine. And then I realized I really like friends to lovers and frenemies to lovers are like two of my favorite things to write. And especially because I write in long series, so each of my books is a standalone within the series, and so it's each couple's, but it's always within large groups of friends and family. So you get to see people kind of clashing before their book even comes. And I love it when I have characters that are just kind of quietly going at it, going for each other's throats. Like they aren't really enemies, but they're forced to hang out with each other, but they don't like each other. But the reason they don't like each other is because they actually really like each other. That's like my favorite thing. So I like to write a lot of stories where you've got characters who are just kind of butting heads for multiple books in a row until it's finally their turn for their book. And my readers love it too. And I tend to write in the same two worlds, my historical world and my contemporary world. And even when I think I'm writing a standalone, it turns out it's not. It's actually set in that world. And somehow I'll connect it because I just like Easter eggs and connections and bringing in side characters and then getting to see all the reader reactions in my Facebook group and my newsletter and stuff of people who are like, oh my God, it's so and so. This is how it's connected. And I'm like, yes, you found it. And then we're all happy.
I love finding those Easter eggs as a reader.
Same.
Then those are the books I like to read too. That's what I like to read. It's what I like to write.
Is there a trope that you find is not really your vibe to write, but you love to read it, or vice versa?
It's not a trope so much, but I have this weird thing for bakeries. Like if the hero or heroine owns a bakery or works in a bakery, like I'm in immediately. I don't need to know anything else about the story. And yet I have never written a single hero or heroine who owns or works in a bakery. I don't know why, because it's literally like people will be like, "Oh, well, the hero works in a bakery." And I'm like, "Say less. I'm in. Just give me the title. I don't need to know anything more about the book," which is how I ended up reading a lot of cozy mysteries for a while.
I love that. I feel like there's so much potential in a bakery romance too, across all subgenres of romance.
Yeah. I love it. I ended up reading a Why Choose with Donut Shifters because it was set in a bakery. It was really well written. This is Mia Harlan, I think, was the author. It was great.
It's incredible.
That's so funny. We're gonna have to find that and link to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like I said, I do have one planned. My next contemporary series, I'm putting one of my heroines in a bakery because I kind of realized that I do this and yet have never written it. I was like, well, I'm going to write it now. So there is that.
You mentioned the Easter eggs, and I wanted to talk about your series. Is that one of the ways that you keep your readers interested in your upcoming releases? Or like,
yeah.
how do you also like manage like balancing that along with like still marketing your backlist, I guess?
Honestly, it makes it easier. So I really like, first of all, I have a huge backlist. So I really like marketing my backlist, thankfully. And a lot of the time, the way that I market my new release is by marketing the backlist books that are in that series. And because my series have become so interconnected, I can even do it where like, okay, I'm starting a new series, but it's still set in the same world. So if I market the series that I just finished, I did this once. I put a whole series, my Bridal Discipline series, I put the whole series on sale the week before the first book in the next series was set to release because I knew people would read through the whole series and I wanted them to go from that series to the first book in the new series. And the heroine in the first book of the new series was introduced in book 3 of my Bridal Discipline series. She was a cousin. I didn't know she was going to be a heroine at that point. She was just a cousin. She was supposed to kind of be like, she was supposed to be keeping the mother of the hero distracted, basically, so that the mom couldn't be too meddling with him, because they had this distant cousin who also needed her, who had had her debut and needed a husband, but was very shy. She was a wallflower. And so mom is distracted trying to get her out of her shell and show her off. And so she can't meddle she's meddling as much as she can with her son, but not too much. And I finished out the series, and that cousin, as I continued through the series, she became a little bit more interesting every book. And it was clear that she was keeping some kind of secret. And a lot of my readers were asking, and they're like, is she getting a story? And I was like, I think I do actually have a story for her, but it doesn't quite fit this series. So we're finishing this series. But if you want to know what happened to Mary, you can come read this book, which is the first book in my next series. And not only that, but in the fifth book of that series, I had the hero of the first book showed up in the fifth book of the previous series. And he was not part of my outline. He showed up out of nowhere. And all of a sudden there was this like rival for the heroine's affections. And I liked him so much, I almost changed that book, because the hero was being such a jerk that I was like, I'm not sure you deserve her. But she chose him in the end. I'm one of those authors who, like, the characters are in full control of the story. And so my outline for that book was utterly disregarded by all of my characters. I had to rewrite it like 3 or 4 times. And so the rival Rex ended up being Mary's hero in the first book. And so people, and you know, my readers were dying they wanted more of Rex. Everyone, I wasn't the only one who fell in love with him. All of them fell in love with him. All of them wanted to see him get a book and happily ever after. All of them were curious about what was going on with Mary. And so everyone was very happy when I started a new series that started with them. And that started with Mary's group of friends. And it's a bunch, and Rex and Mary were the only 2 characters that came over, but there's Easter eggs. There's certain characters from the series before the Bridal Discipline series. There's a character named Cynthia, and she shows up in almost every book of the Bridal Discipline series. She shows up in almost every book of the Deception and Discipline series. She's a fan favorite. She's one of my favorite characters. She will not get out of my head, and she just inserts herself constantly, and people love it. They always want to know when Cynthia is going to show up and what she's going to do, because it's usually going to be something scandalous, because that's just how she rolls. But yeah, and the series, my historicals are all pretty different. They start off with the Domestic Discipline Quartet, which I wrote very early in my career. It was playing with a lot of the power imbalance between a lord and a lady. And so it's very bodice ripper. Then the Bridal Discipline series came along, a little bit more consenty, still pretty bodice rippery. The way I say it is that the Domestic Discipline series is he throws her over his knee for the spanking. The Bridal Discipline series is he orders her over his knee. And then Deception and Discipline, he says, come here and put yourself over my knee. There's always a little bit of crossover in like if she really deserves it, she may get thrown over. But, there was a big change in them. And by the time we got to Deception and Discipline, it was the heroines are all like hunting. One of them is a spy, and they're all hunting down a traitor to the crown. Like this one heroine, she's from like her uncle is the spy master to the crown, but then she recruits her debutante friends to help her find this traitor, because her uncle and her cousins are trying to keep her out of the family business, because she's a woman, and she's basically like, screw you, I will show you that you need me. And that's like, and so and the other 2 have like no spy plot, there's no suspense. Like, these are very different series. And yet readers group them together because they all happen in the same world. They all have a lot of crossover characters. Cynthia shows up constantly. Other side characters from that first series still show up in the most recent series. And that was really proven to me. I did a Kickstarter for the Deception and Discipline series recently, and I decided to do an add-on so that people could also get a hardback version of the Bridal Discipline series. And I was a little bit like, I don't know how many people are going to get this. Like, they're expensive, it's hardbacks. They're big hardbacks because they each have multiple books in them. They're expensive, but I did it. And quite a few more people than I thought would order them. And not only that, a bunch of them went, wait, where's the Domestic Discipline series? And I was like, are you serious? But I put it together for them. It was a late edition add-on to my Kickstarter, and so many more people than I thought also got that as well because they wanted the full set that was in this world. And I've recently moved on to a femdom histrom series, which they are all also reading because it's set in the same world. And my lady spy's uncle and spy master to the crown, turns out he's likes it when a lady takes charge in the bedroom, and that's been very popular. So
Now, I'm curious how, because like your universe is interconnected, so you're able to maintain your readership and get that crossover between series. How are you bringing new readers into this universe? How, like, what tactics are you using?
So one of the nice things about it being multiple series that are cross-connected is that I have multiple entry points into the world. Like there are a lot of people, the Deception and Discipline series was my most popular series, hands down, as the books were releasing. And people would read them and then go back because they would hear in my reader group or they'd sign up for my newsletter and I'd be like, hey, did you know? Or they would just be looking through my other books and see that I had other historicals. And, for some of them, it was, that very first series was a little too dark, a little too dubcon, but they liked the middle series. For some of them, they liked the whole thing. They didn't care. They just wanted all of it. And I do think that getting to know the characters and getting to see them over and over again is really, really helpful. And then when you have characters popping up and not a whole bunch, but if you give a little bit about their story, people are like, wait, that sounds cool. I want to read that. What happened there? If you have a character that shows up constantly and is just a total pain in the butt, like Cynthia, then you're like, well, she must have had a great story. I can always tell when someone has recommended Cynthia because her book will suddenly shoot up a little bit sales. She's the third book in this series, and you kind of see that go up. But then, after that, I see the rise in sales for books 1, 2, and 4 as well. So I think I think it's really nice to have a lot of different entry points, rather than having it be all one huge series. And also because I don't really think that, even though they're all set in the same world, I don't really think that these books work as one huge series because they are different in tone. They're different in like how dubcon it gets. The power plays are different. And then once I added the spies, like they became a little bit more romantic suspense, which the first 2 series were not. So they are all very different series. But once people are in the world, they like to stay in the world. They want to explore the world some more. And so being able to, even if something isn't normally their cup of tea, also once they trust me as an author, they're more willing to branch out. I've had a lot of readers tell me, oh, I don't normally read historical, but I read yours. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that I've written enough books contemporary. They worked through their way through all of them. They learned that they could trust me as an author. They knew what they're getting. And, I'm very upfront with people. I tell people the historicals and the contemporaries are very similar. They all deal, that's my brand. Like I know what my brand is. If you're picking up a Golden Angel book, you're getting a big group of family and friends that are all together, all having their happily ever afters. They're going to have girl time, whether it's a girls' night in the contemporaries or tea in the, girls' tea in the historicals. You're definitely getting the kink and like all the spice and everything like that. And you're going to laugh. Like even when they get a little angsty, like I don't write super high angst. I will occasionally write some angst. I don't really write fluffy either. I have a few fluffy books, but mostly it's they have some problems, but they're going to work through them. And you're not necessarily going to see the like some kind of big dramatic months long breakups or anything like that. People come in knowing that they're going to get through the book. If they cry, it's probably going to be like a feel good cry or like an emotional, just like, oh, I really connected with this character and that did hurt, but they're not sobbing their hearts out. I sometimes wish that was me, but it's not me. When you see those reviews of, oh, they ripped out my heart, I'm like, I want to rip out somebody's heart, but that's not what it is. My tagline is heart and bottom warming romance. And I do really feel like that's what people expect when they pick up one of my books. And so they know that regardless of whether it's historical, whether it's contemporary, whether it's one of my alien books, that's what they're getting. And so they're willing to take a chance on it. And then once they're in that world, they usually like to stay there and meet everybody and hang out and see what's happening and go through all the different stories, because I do like to write different stories and different kinks and different types of characters as much as I can.
And as you've hinted at, your books are on the steamier side, which can be a bit more challenging to market. Do you have any advice for marketing steamier, kinkier books?
Sure, they know that's what it is. I love getting bad reviews where someone is like, oh my God, this was so filthy. It's so, they're treating the women terribly. How can this be romance if he's spanking her? And I'm like, yes, please give it to me. Warn them away. Because I know that those aren't my readers, I want that. And I'll occasionally, I'll get the occasional comment on like one of my Facebook ads of someone who's like, I read this, it's filthy and full of all this stuff, and I can't understand why these ads keep coming up. And I never delete those. I take the time and say, thank you for trying me out. You're getting this because you're commenting on it. Like the way the algorithm works is that because you're engaging with this, and then I explain to them how to find the 3 dots and to say that they don't want to see more, which 1 gets me engagement on my Facebook ad. 2, anyone looking at that Facebook ad who somehow did not understand that a book called Birching His Bride in the Domestic Discipline series is spicy domestic discipline romance, they will then read the comments and hopefully
we'll get through to them somehow.
We'll find a way. And, it is hard because on the retailers, they really don't like you saying certain words. So you kind of have to, it's almost like code. Like, he's a heavy-handed alpha male whose harsh discipline runs, leads to passion in their marital bed. Like, you can't just be like, yes, he spanks her really hard and then they bang. Like, I wish we could. It would solve so much, but we can't do that. So we have to kind of couch it in these terms, in certain terms, in the blurbs and in the titles and in the subtitles. And you do the best you can to learn the code words. That would be one thing, is you do the best you can to learn the code words. You do the best you can to put it, Facebook ads let you get away with some stuff. BookBub ads are a little bit more forgiving, and you just kind of have to go with it, and then hope that someone leaves a review about how horribly smut-filled it is, and then just go, thank you. That's something. Whenever I see someone like, someone left me a bad review, I'm like, what did it say? This might be a good thing.
Yeah, because you can kind of twist it. Do you ever take a bad review and turn it into an ad?
Absolutely. That was actually, I did it. So I don't know if I was the first person to do it or not. I don't. What I do know is it was back, I don't even remember when it was. It was back possibly 10 years ago. I was in this Facebook group with authors, and one of them was turning the bad reviews into motivational posters for the authors to try to make them feel better. And I was looking at this, and I got this one review that called Philip's Rules horrible and disgusting. I have it memorized. I love this review so much. Horrible and disgusting. Must have been written by a man. There's a man, a man showing his love through spanking and sodomy. Utter filth. Do not read. And I was like, this is the best review ever. And I asked the person making the memes, I was like, I don't want this as a motivational poster. I want it to be really pretty. I don't want the kitten. I just want it to be really pretty. Can you make me that? And then she did. And I put it up on Facebook, and that thing, it could this was before things we were really oh, it went viral. But I was like, if it had been on TikTok, this would have been viral. It got share after share after share after share. And I got a little bit of a reputation as the person who would do this. And I'm just I don't want it. I hope that if the reader ever sees it, that they don't feel ashamed or anything, because honestly, I'm so grateful for that review. It is not meant as a mockery. It is meant as, this is the best thing for my book, because it's going to draw in the readers who are going to like this content, and it's going to keep those who don't away. Like that is to me the best kind of review that you can get. The one that's telling people exactly what's in this book. The right people will come running. The wrong people will go, that's not for me, and they won't download it. And that's exactly what I want. Although I did have to laugh a little bit just because the sodomy is at the end of the book. So I know she finished it.
That's incredible.
Telling on yourself a little bit there.
Oh, that's so funny. I know we're almost at the end of our time. We've taken up a bunch of your time already today, but I have kind of a left turn into a slightly different topic for you before we go, and that is conferences. Because
Okay.
you attend conferences as both an author, as a speaker, doing signings, but you also go to fan-driven conventions such as Dragon Con and Comic Con as a fan. And as a huge nerd myself, I need to ask if you have any conference-related advice for our listeners, both those attending as an author and doing signings for the first time, or those who are going to nerd out and dress in a Battlestar Galactica flight suit.
Water, deodorant, comfortable shoes.
Phenomenal.
Immediately. Three most important things.
I think that tip works for both authors.
It works for everybody. That is for whatever kind of conference you are going to. Water, deodorant, comfortable shoes. Also, if you're the type to do like airborne or emergency or something like that, the con crud is real. And again, does not matter. Also, the con drop afterwards is real, regardless of what type of convention you're going to. Con drop would be like you get home and all of a sudden you were surrounded by your people. You were surrounded by all your people, all the people who like the same things as you do. And then you get home and the people are gone. And even introverts, I've seen it, even introverts experience the drop because there's just something different about being with people who get you. Like you just walk in and again, this doesn't matter whether it's a nerdy convention or a book convention. Like you walk in and it's friends you haven't met yet because you're all into the same thing. You're all there for the same reasons. You all enjoy the same stuff. And it makes it so much easier to make friends. And it makes it so easy to feel like you can be yourself and like you can just enjoy and have joy. And I think for women, especially the conference that I was recently at, CalypsoCon, Callie asked us to say something, to the readers. We each took turns on the final night, and Lila Dubois said something that was so profound to me. And she was talking about how brave it was and how important it was for all those women to be there in that room together, especially for women, because so few of us take the time to do things that bring us joy, to do things that are just for us. And a lot of the time, these book conventions, especially romance book conventions, they are for the readers. They are for the women who are there, and you don't get that very often. There are not a lot of places. And taking a whole weekend or a whole day to do something just for you, even now, like, is just so almost revolutionary. We talk, I think people are becoming a lot more aware about self-care and a lot more aware about societal expectations that have been put on women and how a lot of us feel like just doing anything for ourselves can feel selfish. And so when you take a whole weekend away from your family, a whole weekend away from your work, from your responsibilities, and you go to do something that's just for you, that's just for joy, like that is revolutionary. And I have been sitting with that thought just all week because I do. And I think it's so important. And so I love conferences, regardless of what kind. I go to AwesomeCon like every year. I do Ren Fair. I love doing my nerd stuff, but I also love the book conventions, and specifically for that reason, because, it's the nerdy stuff at Ren Fair, AwesomeCon, Dragon Con, all of those, like it's a whole bunch of people coming together. But I think for me, what's really special about the book signings and the book conventions is that it really is a bunch of women coming together to take time for themselves, to just do something joyful for themselves and do something that a lot of people frown on, because romance is still a genre that has a little bit of taboo in society. There's controversy around it just because it includes women having happily ever afters. It includes women finding happiness. It includes women having standards for their romantic partner and having those standards met or exceeded. And that is such a difference from the way society has been for so many decades, possibly centuries, that I think it's a really beautiful thing. And I think it's necessary. And I think it's such a wonderful component to being part of the book community. But you are definitely going to want comfortable shoes and deodorant and water.
I love that. It's good advice. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about what you're working on next?
So my next release that's coming out in about a month, actually, is called Secret Submission, which I can't tell you too much about because everything about it is a secret. It's my first secret admirer romance. In my Masters of Marquis series, one of the femdoms, the dominatrixes, Mistress Julie, started getting notes from a secret admirer very early on. I think it's the first or second book. She got her first note. And every book since then, she's gotten a note. And in the most recent book, she got a note from her secret admirer offering to reveal themselves. And that was how the previous book ended in the epilogue. And I have been very careful. I normally, like this series has all the heroes on the covers of this series, except for this book. I put just like a mask on it. Which is not the real cover. The real cover will come out about a week after the book releases because I realized I started to order the cover and then I was like, oh God, if people see this cover model, they're going to immediately know who the secret admirer is. So I can't do that. So yeah, that's about all I've got for that one. But I also have I'm finishing up both of my main series very quickly. My historical, I'm doing the third book in my femdom historical romance series, which will be a season for Christmas. I'm going to be starting writing that soon. And working on a Kickstarter with Shayla Black and Sierra Cartwright that's called Forbidden Fuck. And that is all like it's all forbidden romance. It's so messy. We've all chosen very, very messy relationships, and I'm so excited. I think it's okay if I say, I think we've announced it somewhere, but my story in it is called Your Twin Will Do. So really just as messy as I can make it. And
incredible.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So that's what's going on with me right now is Secret Submission and then finishing up my Desire and Discipline series. And in that series, I took out a whole bunch of Dukes because I want to write I want to write a series of Duke romances. So I decided that to make it work in my head, if a whole bunch of Dukes happen to be unalived in a hunting lodge explosion, then it would make sense that there's like 7 young, attractive Dukes in immediate need of brides and heirs. So that's my next series that starts next year.
It's amazing. And where can our listeners find you online?
So my website is www.goldenangelromance.com. I am, as we've talked a little bit about, I am most active on Facebook. You can find me as Golden Angel. I also have my Facebook page, Golden Angel Romances, which I don't check much. My private Facebook group is the much more active space, and that's the Golden Angel Legion layer. And then I'm also on TikTok as at Golden Angel Romance. Other places, have what we call a presence, where I have a profile. I'm not really there. Don't message me on Instagram, please. You won't hear from me. I'm sorry.
We'll link to all of your more active accounts in the show notes. Perfect.
It's really bad because there are posts going up. They're all scheduled posts. I don't actually check the messages. I'm so sorry.
We appreciate the honesty.
Yeah. Truly. Well, Golden, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out and chat with us today. It's been lovely.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Thank you for listening to the Kobo Writing Life podcast. If you're interested in picking up Golden's books, we will include links in our show notes as well as a link to her TikTok. If you're enjoying this podcast, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe. And if you're looking for more tips on growing your self-publishing business, you can find us at kobowritinglife.com, and be sure you are following us on socials. We are at Kobo Writing Life on Facebook and Twitter, and at kobo.writing.life on Instagram.
This episode was hosted by Laura Granger and Rachel Wharton, with production by Terrence Abrahams. Editing is provided by Kelly Robotham. Our theme music is composed by Tearjerker, and thanks to Golden Angel for being a guest. If you're ready to start your publishing journey, sign up today at kobo.com/writinglife. Until next time, happy writing!